The cowgirl lived alone for years, until 10 huge Comanches arrived asking for shelter, and one of them fell in love with her. The lightning struck first, not the sky, but the earth itself, splitting the ancient oak that marked the boundary of Clara Dusbourne's ranch. She watched from her kitchen window as the tree fell, its roots clawing at air like desperate fingers. Thunder followed, rolling across the Texas plains with a sound like buffalo returning from the dead. Clara set down her coffee, black, bitter, cold, and walked onto the porch barefoot. The storm was different from others. It carried voices in its wind, memories in its rain. She'd learned to read weather like scripture after 7 years alone. This one spoke of change. Her ranch sprawled across 200 acres of stubborn land, more rock than soil, more thorn than grass. The cattle had long since been sold. Only horses remained, 12 wild mustangs she'd gentled with patience instead of rope. They trusted her now and came when she whistled low and long, like calling ghosts home. She wasn't always alone. Once, there'd been Daniel, with hands that built fences and dreams. There was their daughter, Rose, who laughed like spring water over stones. Cholera took them both in 3 days, leaving her with land that suddenly felt like a grave she couldn't fill. That was 1868. Now it was 1875, and Clara had become something the townspeople whispered about. The woman who wore men's chaps and rode astride. Who branded her own cattle and shot her own game. Who hadn't set foot in church since the preacher said her family's death was God's mysterious ways. She'd rebuilt herself from bone and will. Cut her auburn hair to her shoulders, traded dresses for leather and denim. Her hands grew hard as mesquite bark, her aim true as truth. The other ranchers stopped visiting after she outshot them at the county fair. Good riddance. But tonight, as purple clouds gathered like bruises on the horizon, Clara felt the old loneliness rise. It came with storms, with the smell of rain on dust. Made her remember laughter that wasn't hers alone. The first drops fell fat and slow. Then faster. Then sideways, driven by wind that screamed like something hunted. She should go inside, bar the door, and wait it out like always. Instead, she stood there, letting the water soak through her shirt, plastering it to skin that hadn't known another's touch in 7 winters. That's when she saw them. 10 riders, moving through the storm like it was mere air. They rode without hurry, back straight despite the wind trying to bend them. As they drew closer, lightning illuminated them fully, Comanche warriors, rain streaming off their faces, horses moving in perfect unison. Clara's hand found her rifle, propped against the porch rail. She didn't raise it. Something in their approach wasn't a threat. It was searching. They stopped at her gate, respecting the boundary. The lead rider pushed back his hood. Even in the stormlight, she could see the scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, pale against sun-darkened skin. His eyes held steady on hers. "We seek shelter from the storm," he called in English, accent thick but clear. "Only until it passes." Clara studied them. 10 warriors, armed but not threatening. Their horses trembled with exhaustion, not fear. One of the younger riders swayed in his saddle, injured or ill. "Why should I trust you?" she called back. The scarred leader dismounted, hands visible and empty. He walked to the gate but didn't open it. "Because you know storms," he said. "And you know what it means to need shelter when the world turns cruel." Something in his voice, not pleading, just honest, made her lower the rifle. She'd survived 7 years by reading people like weather signs. These men weren't raiders. They were running from something or toward something. Either way, the storm was winning. "Barn sturdy," she said. "You can wait it out there." "Gratitude," he said, the word careful in his mouth like he'd practiced it. But as they filed through the gate, the young rider finally fell, sliding from his horse into the mud. The others moved to help, but Clara was already running, her bare feet slipping in the wet earth. She reached him first and turned him over. Blood seeped through his shirt. Not a wound from battle, something else. Sickness. Fever. "He needs more than a barn," she heard herself say. The scarred leader knelt beside her. Up close, she could see his face clearly. Strong bones, eyes the color of deep water, something ancient and patient in his expression. We impose too much already. Bring him inside, Clara said, surprising herself. The rest can take the barn. They carried the young warrior into her house, the first men to cross her threshold since the doctor who couldn't save her family. She pointed to the cot near the fireplace, then went for her medicine box. Behind her, she heard the scarred one giving quiet orders in Comanche. The others filed out, leaving only him. "I stay with my brother," he said. Clara nodded, already cutting away the boy's shirt. The wound was infected, angry red with fever. She'd seen worse, been treated worse. Her hands moved without thinking, cleaning, packing with herbs, binding tight. "You know healing," the warrior observed. "Had to learn. No one else would come." "Why?" She glanced at him. "Because I'm a woman who lives like a man. Because I don't apologize for surviving." He studied her face like he was reading something written there. "My people have a word, tsina. It means stands alone but stands strong." "What's your name?" she asked, surprising herself again. "Maybe. It means to sky." "Clara," she offered. "It means nothing special." "All names mean something," he said. "Sometimes we just forget what." The storm raged on. The boy's fever climbed. Clara worked through the night while Marp tended the fire and watched. Neither spoke much, but the silence wasn't empty. It was full of shared purpose, of hands working toward the same goal. Just before dawn, the fever broke. The boy, barely 16, opened his eyes and spoke rapid Comanche. Marp answered softly, then looked at Clara. "He says you have hands like his grandmother." Gentle but certain. Clara felt something shift in her chest. "He'll live. But he needs rest. Real rest. We cannot stay. We are hunted." "By whom?" Marp's jaw tightened. "By those who say we cannot exist anymore. The reservation hunters. We left because cages kill warriors slowly. Better to die free." Clara stood, wiping her hands on her blooded apron. Outside, the storm was breaking, the sun piercing through in sharp spears of light. She thought of her empty house, her silent land, and her heart that had turned to leather. "Stay," she said. "Until he's healed. I have room. I have food. And nobody comes here anyway." Marp looked at her for a long moment. "Why would you risk this?" She met his gaze straight on. "Because I know what it's like to be told you're living wrong. Because an empty house is just another kind of dying." He stood slowly, and she realized how tall he was, how much space he filled without trying to. "Your kindness will not be forgotten." "I don't want your gratitude," Clara said. "I want..." She paused, unsure how to finish. "Yes? I want to not be alone in my own home. Even if just for a while." Something passed over his face, understanding, maybe. Or recognition. He nodded once, decisively. "Then we stay. Until my brother heals." As the sun rose full, painting the wet world gold, Clara watched Marp walk to the barn to tell his men. His movements were certain and graceful despite his size. She touched her chest where something was stirring, not her heart, exactly. Something deeper. Something she'd buried with her family. Hope, maybe. Or just the dangerous comfort of not being alone. She went inside to make coffee for 11. Her hands shook only a little. 3 days passed before Clara understood that the Comanche had their own kind of quiet. Not the empty silence she'd wrapped around herself like armor, but something living, breathing. They moved through her space without disturbing it, spoke in gestures more than words, and fixed things without being asked. The youngest, the one she'd healed, was called Kainu. His fever gone, he spent hours with her horses, speaking to them in low Comanche until even her most skittish mare ate from his palm. The others had names she learned slowly: Saf, who carved bone into impossible shapes, Toe, who could track a spider across stone, and Marco, whose laughter came rare but bright. But it was Marp who pulled at her attention like the moon pulls tides. He worked from dawn until dark, mending her fallen fences, reinforcing the barn roof, and digging a new well where the old one had gone brackish. He never asked what needed doing, just saw and acted. When she brought him water, their fingers brushed. When she handed him tools, he held her gaze a second longer than necessary. "You're trying to pay a debt that doesn't exist," she told him one evening. He was sharpening her axe, his movements precise and rhythmic. "No debt. Only balance. I don't need, you need." His voice was quiet but firm. "You've needed it for 7 winters. Your land shows it. Your hands show it." He looked up. "Your eyes show it." Clara turned away, heat rising in her cheeks. "You don't know me. I know you talk to your horses when you think no one listens. I know you touch your daughter's saddle every morning but never use it. I know you count graves with your coffee spoons, 2 scoops, like you're still making it for 2. Her breath caught. "You watch me. I see you." The distinction in his voice made her stomach flip. "There's a difference." That night, she found herself at her mirror for the first time in months. Her face had weathered like good leather, lines carved by sun and sorrow. But her eyes, green as spring grass, still held life. She braided her hair properly and used the last of her rose oil soap. When she came down for supper, Marp's gaze found her immediately. Something shifted in his expression, subtle as wind changing direction. After the meal, the men gathered outside, sharing stories in Comanche around a small fire. Clara sat on her porch, close enough to hear but separate. Until Marp stood and walked to her, extending his hand. "Come. Kainu wants to thank you properly." She let him pull her up, his grip warm and calloused. The circle opened for her, and Kainu stood, still thin but steady. He spoke in Comanche, gesturing to his chest, to her, and to the sky. The other men murmured approval. "He says you gave him back his breath," Marp translated. "In our way, this means you're family now. If you accept." Clara felt tears threaten, the first in years. "How do I accept?" "Say yes." "Yes," she whispered. Kainu smiled and handed her something, a small bundle wrapped in deer hide. Inside was a necklace, a single turquoise stone wrapped in silver wire. "From his grandmother's things," Marp explained. "For the woman with healing hands." Clara couldn't speak. Marp helped her fasten it, his fingers gentle on her neck. The stone rested cool against her throat. Later, when the others had bedded down in the barn, Marp lingered. They stood together in the doorway between house and night, neither moving to their separate spaces. "Your husband," he said carefully. "He was good to you." "Yes." Daniel was, he was sunshine. Easy laughter. Soft hands. She touched the door frame. "I loved him for being everything I wasn't." "And now?" She looked at him. "Now I think maybe I need someone who understands shadows. Who knows that survival sometimes means becoming harder than the thing trying to break you." He stepped closer. "You're not hard, Clara. You're strong. Like iron that bends but doesn't break. I feel broken most days. Broken things can be mended. Sometimes they're stronger for it." His hand covered hers on the doorframe. "In my culture, we have a word for it. *nabai, it means reformed by fire. Is that what you are? Reformed?" His smile was sad. "Every day. Every choice to keep walking when the world says, stop." He squeezed her hand gently. "You understand this." She did. And that understanding felt dangerous, like standing too close to a cliff edge. But also thrilling, like the moment before a wild horse decides to trust. "I should go in," she said but didn't move. "Yes," he agreed but didn't step back. They stood there, hands touching, breathing the same night air, until finally Clara pulled away. "Good night, Marp." "Marp means sky," he said softly. "But my full name is Marp too. Sky Wolf. The one who hunts between Earth and stars." "What does that mean?" "It means I was born not fully of either world. Always between. Always searching for where I belong." Clara touched the turquoise at her throat. Maybe that's not a curse. Maybe it's freedom. His eyes darkened with something she couldn't name. Maybe. She went inside but stood at her window watching until he disappeared into the barn. Her hand still felt warm where he'd touched it. The house felt less empty, but somehow the loneliness had shifted, sharpened into something else. Want. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass and whispered her daughter's name, asking forgiveness for the living she was about to do. The riders appeared at dawn 2 weeks later, silhouettes against a red sky that looked like the earth was bleeding upward. Clara saw them first from her position in the barn, where she'd been helping Marp tend a colicky horse. 10 men, maybe 12, moving with the purposeful pace of those who expected to find what they sought. Inside, Marp commanded, his voice sharp as flint. "Now!" But Clara was already moving, not to the house but to the tack room where she kept her rifles. "They're on my land," she said. "I meet them. These are not neighbors come to borrow sugar." He caught her arm. "These are hunters. Reservation enforcement. They kill or cage, nothing between. Then they'll learn different." She shrugged him off, checking her Winchester's load. The other Comanche were already armed, materializing from various corners of the ranch like smoke-given form. No panic, just readiness. They'd been running long enough to know the rhythm of pursuit. "Clara!" Marp's voice softened. "This is not your fight." She looked at him straight. "You've been mending my fences for 2 weeks. Eating at my table. Your brother calls me sister. You think I don't know what that makes this?" Something passed over his face, surprise, maybe, or grief. "You would die for strangers? I'd kill for family. And you just spent 2 weeks teaching me that's what you are." The riders stopped at her gate, the same as Marp's band had. But these men didn't ask. The leader, a thick-necked man with sergeant stripes and cruel eyes, simply announced, "By order of the federal government and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, we're tracking 10 renegade Comanche who refused lawful relocation. We have evidence they passed this way." Clara stepped onto her porch, rifle casual in her arms. "This is private property. You have evidence, you show it to the sheriff first." The sergeant spat tobacco juice near his horse's hooves. "Harboring fugitive Indians is a federal crime. Just tell us if you've seen them, and we'll be on our way." "Haven't seen anyone but my own reflection in weeks," Clara lied smooth as butter. "Now, unless you have papers giving you the right to be on my land, I'll ask you to move along." "Listen here, woman, no." Clara raised the rifle, not quite pointing but ready. "You listen. This is Texas. This is my land. Bought and paid for with my husband's blood and my daughter's grave. If you want to search it, you bring a warrant. If you want to threaten me, you better be faster than I am accurate. And mister, I can shoot the balls off a mosquito at 50 yards. Behind her, she heard the slightest sound, breath held and released. The Comanche were watching. The sergeant's face went purple. "You're making a mistake. These savages are dangerous. They killed 3 men in Oklahoma Territory. Men trying to force them from their homes." Clara asked. "Sounds like self-defense to me." "Step aside, woman," or, the shot came from behind Clara, passing so close to the sergeant's hat it took the feather clean off. Marp stepped out, his rifle smoking. "The lady asked you to leave." The other Comanche emerged like a tide, spreading across the porch and yard. 10 warriors, painted for war now, weapons ready. The government men suddenly looked less certain. "You just signed your death warrant," the sergeant snarled. "All of you?" "Maybe," Marp said. "But not today." Today you ride on. Tomorrow you think hard about whether killing us is worth losing half your men. Because that's what it will cost. We die, but we die fighting. And her, he nodded to Clara, she dies defending her home. How's that going to look in your report? Federal agents killing a white widow on her own land. The sergeant's jaw worked like he was chewing iron. His men shifted nervously in their saddles. Finally, he yanked his horse's head around. This isn't over. Never is, Clara called after them. But next time bring that warrant. Or bring coffins. They watched until the riders disappeared into the heat shimmer. Only then did Clara's hand start shaking. Marp took the rifle from her gently, his fingers wrapping around hers for a moment. Brave, he said. Foolish, but brave. Pot calling the kettle black, she managed. He smiled, that rare full smile that changed his whole face. Perhaps we're well matched in foolishness. But Kainu was already running from his lookout position. They're not leaving. They're making camp by Widow's Creek. 2 miles out. The smile died. Marp turned to his men and spoke rapid Comanche. They scattered to defensive positions. Then he faced Clara. You should go to town. Say we forced you, held you hostage. They'll believe. Stop. She pressed her hand to his chest. Just stop. I made my choice the night I let you in. I'm not running from it now. They'll come back. With more men. Then we better get ready. He covered her hand with his. Clara. My brave Tsena. This is not your war. The hell it isn't. She felt tears threaten but forced them down. I've been dead for 7 years, Marp. Just breathing, not living. Then you rode in and reminded me what it feels like to have something worth defending. You think I'm giving that up to save my skin? He pulled her against him suddenly, fierce and desperate. She should have been shocked. Instead, she pressed closer, breathing him in, leather and sage and something wild. If you die, he started. Then I die living. Not hiding. He pulled back enough to see her face. You shame me with your courage. Good. Maybe it'll rub off. Despite everything, he laughed. Then kissed her forehead, gentle as rain. Tonight we prepare. Tomorrow. Tomorrow we teach them that some things can't be caged. As the sun climbed higher, they worked together, all of them. Fortifying positions, checking weapons, and planning strategies. Clara taught the Comanche her land's secret paths and hidden springs. They taught her war cries and how to move silent as smoke. When darkness fell, she found Marp standing watch on the roof. She climbed up beside him, bringing coffee and dried meat. Tell me about before, she said. Before the running. He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I had a wife. 2 sons. The older would be Kainu's age now. His voice was steady, but his hands clenched. Soldiers came to move us to the reservation. We resisted. In the fighting. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Clara took his hand. I'm sorry. I thought I'd died with them. Walked around empty, looking for a good death. Then Kainu got sick, and I had to keep him alive. Then we found your door, and you. He turned to her. You reminded me that some hearts are too stubborn to stay broken. Marp, if tomorrow goes bad. If they come with an army. I need you to know, she kissed him. Not gentle, not careful. It was like the world was ending and beginning all at once. He responded instantly, pulling her against him, one hand tangling in her hair. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she said, save it. Tell me after we win. And if we don't, then we'll have bigger problems than unspoken words. He laughed against her mouth. Practical woman. Stubborn woman. There's a difference. They stayed on the roof until the moon rose, planning and watching and allowing themselves these stolen moments. because tomorrow the hunters would return. Tomorrow blood would spill on her land one way or another. But tonight, she wasn't alone. Tonight, she had family worth fighting for. And that, Clara thought as Marp's thumb traced circles on her hand, was worth any price tomorrow might demand. They came with the first light, 20 men, not 12. Clara counted them through her rifle scope from her position in the barn loft. The sergeant had brought reinforcements, including what looked like a Gatling gun on a wagon. Ambitious, Marp murmured beside her. He'd been there all night, neither of them sleeping, both knowing what dawn would bring. They mean to end this quick, Clara said. Yes. But quick doesn't mean easy. Below them, the other Comanche were positioned strategically, Saf and Toe in the house with clear sight lines, Marco and 3 others in defensive positions around the yard. Kainu, despite protests, was with the horses, ready to scatter them if needed. The sergeant rode forward, stopping just outside rifle range. Last chance, Mrs. Dustborn. Send them out, and you walk away clean. Clara sighted down her barrel. Counteroffer. You turn around now, and I don't put a bullet through your left eye. You're defending murderers. I'm defending men who want to live free. If that's murder in your book, maybe you're reading the wrong book. The sergeant raised his hand. Clara saw the signal and knew what came next. Down, she yelled, pulling Marp with her as the Gatling gun opened up. The barn wall exploded in splinters. They rolled behind hay bales as bullets chewed through wood like rumbling thunder. From the house came return fire, disciplined, careful shots. One government man fell from his horse. The gun! Marp pointed. We have to take it out or a fire arrow arced through the morning air, landing in the wagon bed. Kainu, from wherever he was hidden, had soaked it in kerosene. The wagon erupted in flames. The Gatling gun crew scattered. Remind me to increase that boy's whiskey ration, Clara muttered, then squeezed off 2 shots. Another rider down. The battle became chaos. Government men dismounting, seeking cover. Comanche firing from multiple positions, making their 10 seem like 20. Clara and Marp worked in tandem, she'd shoot, he'd cover while she reloaded, then switch. Left side, he called. She swung and fired. A man trying to flank the house stumbled and fell. But there were too many. Always too many. They're trying to surround us, she said. Let them try. Marp's voice was calm as deep water. Toe and Marco know what to do. As if on cue, explosions rocked the east side of the property. Homemade bombs, whiskey bottles filled with gunpowder and nails. 3 more men down, others scattering. But the sergeant was smart. He'd kept reserves. Fresh riders appeared from the tree line, and Clara's heart sank. They were outnumbered 3-1 now. Clara! Marp's hand found hers. If this goes bad, it won't. She squeezed back. We're too mean to die. He laughed, wild and free. Then let's be mean. They fought like demons. Clara had never known she could be this fierce, this accurate, this unafraid. Beside her, Marp was a force of nature, every shot deliberate, every movement efficient. But numbers tell. They were being pushed back, compressed. The house was taking heavy fire. She heard Saf cry out, hit but not dead. We have to fall back to the house, she said. Go. I'll cover. Together or not at all. They moved as one, firing and displacing, using every scrap of cover. A bullet grazed Clara's shoulder, spinning her around. Marp caught her and held her up. Just a scratch, she gasped. Liar. But he smiled saying it. They made it to the house, stumbling through the door as bullets peppered the frame. Inside was controlled chaos, the wounded being tended, ammunition running low. How bad? Marp asked Toe in Comanche. The answer made his face darken. Clara didn't need translation. They were losing. There. Kainu pointed out the window. Riders from the south. Clara's heart sank further. More government men. They were finished. But wait. The sergeant was turning, looking confused. These riders weren't his. Those aren't soldiers, she breathed. They were ranchers. Her neighbors. Old Tom Aldridge at the lead, his sons beside him. The widow Martinez with her ranch hands. Even Pastor Williams, who'd condemned her choices from the pulpit. Heard shooting, Tom called out, as casual as discussing the weather. Figured Clara might need help with some varmint problem. This is federal business, the sergeant shouted. Interfere and what? Widow Martinez asked, her rifle trained on him. You'll shoot us all? 30 witnesses? Good luck explaining that to your superiors. The tide turned. Not just the numbers, the whole feel of it. Government men looking uncertain. Local ranchers looked determined. She's harboring fugitives, the sergeant tried. She's defending her property, Pastor Williams said firmly. Says so in the Bible. And the Constitution. You got a problem with either. Clara felt tears on her cheeks. These people who'd shunned her, gossiped about her, they'd still come. Because whatever else, she was one of them. And out here, that meant something. You've got 5 minutes to clear out, Tom announced. After that, we start shooting federal agents on Texas soil. See how that plays in Washington. The sergeant looked like he might explode. But he also looked like a man who could count. His 12 remaining men against 40+ locals. This isn't over, he snarled at Clara. It is today, she called back. They left. Slow and angry, but they left. The ranchers stayed until the dust settled, literally and figuratively. Why? Clara asked Tom. After everything. Why come? The old man shrugged. You're a pain in the ass, Clara Dustborn. But you're our pain in the ass. Besides, he glanced at Marp, a man defends his home and family, that's his right. It doesn't matter the color of his skin. After they left, promising to spread word that the Dustborn ranch was under local protection, Clara collapsed on her porch. Marp sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder. Your people came, he said, wonder in his voice. Surprised me too. She leaned into him. Though I think they came for the principal more than for me. No. He turned her face to his. They came because you're theirs. Even when you push them away, you belong to this land, these people. That's powerful medicine. What about you? She asked. Do you belong? He was quiet for a long moment. I thought belonging died with my family. But now. He touched her face. Now I think maybe belonging isn't about blood. It's about choice. And I choose this. Choose you. The government will come back. With more men. An army, maybe. Maybe. Or maybe they'll decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Either way. He kissed her, soft and certain. Either way, we face it together. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of victory and tomorrow, Clara's ranch filled with a new kind of life. Comanche warriors cleaning weapons beside Texas cattle. Kanu is teaching her horses Comanche words. Wounded being tended with gentle hands. Not peace, exactly. But possibility. And for the first time in 7 years, Clara Dustborn believed in tomorrow. 3 months passed before Clara realized she'd stopped counting days. Time had taken on a different quality, measured now in shared meals and mended fences, in Comanche words learned and English words taught, in the way Marp's hand found hers without thinking when they walked the property at sunset. The government hadn't returned. Tom Aldridge brought word that the territorial governor, facing election, had decided that dead federal agents on Texas soil would make poor campaign material. The hunt was called off, officially. Unofficially, Clara knew they lived on borrowed time. But borrowed time, she'd learned, could be the sweetest kind. The ranch had transformed. What had been one woman's stubborn stand against emptiness had become something else, a small community. Saf had built a traditional Comanche lodge near the creek. Toe was breaking horses using methods that made Clara's rough work look like child's play. Kainu had started a garden, coaxing life from soil Clara had thought dead. And Marp. Marp had made her laugh again. "You're doing it wrong," he said, watching her attempt to tan a deer hide using the method he'd shown her. "I'm doing exactly what you said." "No. You're doing what you think I said." "Different thing." He knelt beside her, adjusting her grip on the scraping tool. "Like this. Feel the difference." She felt the difference, all right. Felt it every time he was near. The way her body leaned toward his without permission. The way her breath caught when he smiled. The way her bed felt too empty even though she'd slept alone for 7 years. "Clara." His voice had gone serious. "We need to talk." Her hand stilled. "About?" "Winter's coming. My men, some want to go south. Mexico, maybe. Away from government reach." Her throat tightened. "And you?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Then, I told them I'm staying. If you'll have me." She looked at him then, really looked. Saw the uncertainty in his eyes, the question he was really asking. "Have you?" She laughed, but it came out shaky. "Marp too, you've been fixing things I didn't even know were broken. You've made my horses trust again. You've made my land come alive. You've made me," she stopped. "Made you what?" "Made me remember I'm more than grief walking around in boots." He touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "You were always more. You just needed reminding." "So did you?" "Yes." His voice roughened. "So did I." They kissed there in the afternoon sun, deer-hide forgotten, the world shrinking to just this, two people who'd lost everything finding something new in each other. That night, after the others had bedded down, Clara made a decision. She walked to the barn where Marp kept his bedroll, heart hammering like she was 16 again. He was awake, sitting up before she could speak. "Clara. I'm tired of empty beds," she said simply. "Tired of pretending this isn't what it is." He stood slowly. "And what is it?" "Love." The word fell between them like a stone in still water. Unexpected and inconvenient and absolutely undeniable love. He crossed to her in 2 strides and pulled her against him. "I love you too. Have since you aimed that rifle at my men and lied about seeing us. Brave woman. Beautiful woman. My woman, if you'll have me." "I'll have you," she whispered against his mouth. "Tonight and tomorrow and whatever comes after." He lifted her then and carried her to the house while she laughed and protested that she could walk. But there was something sweet in being carried, in letting someone else be strong for once. Later, tangled in sheets and moonlight, Clara traced the scars on his chest. Each one a story, a survival, a reason he'd ended up at her door. "I never thought I'd have this again," she admitted. "Neither did I." He kissed her forehead. "The spirits have strange ways. Remind me to thank them." "Thank them by living," he said. "By being happy. By not apologizing for the joy you've found. Even if the world says it's wrong. A white woman and a Comanche warrior. Especially then." His arms tightened around her. "The world's been wrong before. About you living alone. About us being savages. About what makes a family. Family." The word made her chest tight with possibility. As if reading her thoughts, Marp said, "Kainu asked if he could call you mother." Clara's eyes filled. "What did you tell him?" "To ask you himself." "And if we..." She couldn't finish. "If we have children." His hand spread across her belly. "Then they'll be raised knowing both worlds. Strong and free and beloved. The town won't accept it. Mixed blood children they'll face what we all face. A world that wants to tell us who we are. But they'll have something we didn't, parents who know better. Who'll teach them to define themselves? Clara turned in his arms, studying his face in the moonlight. You've thought about this? Every night since you opened your door. He smiled. I'm a patient man, Clara. But even patience has limits. She kissed him then, deep and sure. No more patience. No more waiting. We've both done enough of that. Outside, a wolf howled, long and low and wild. An answer came from another direction. Then another. A whole pack, calling to each other across the darkness. Your brothers? Clara asked, remembering his name. Sky Wolf. Perhaps. Or perhaps just wolves being wolves. Either way, they sing of belonging. Then let them sing, Clara said, settling against his chest. We belong too. As sleep took her, warm and safe in the arms of a man who'd ridden out of a storm and into her heart, Clara heard the wolves singing. But closer, sweeter, she heard Marp's heartbeat, steady as a drum, sure as sunrise, hers as long as she wanted it. And she wanted it forever. Clara knew she was pregnant before her body told her. Knew it in the way food tasted different, colors seemed brighter, and every dawn felt like a promise instead of just another day. She stood at her kitchen window, watching Marp work with a new colt, and pressed a hand to her still flat belly. Fear and joy warred in her chest. She'd done this before, carried life, birthed it, loved it, lost it. The graves on the hill reminded her daily that nothing was certain, especially not happiness. You're thinking too loud, Saf said from the doorway. The older Comanche had stayed through winter, becoming something like a grandfather to them all. His eyes, sharp despite his years, missed nothing. Good thoughts or bad? Both, Clara admitted. All. He nodded, moving to stand beside her. Together they watched Marp's patient work with the colt. He'll be a good father. How did you, woman watches a man like that, hand on her belly? Only one reason. He smiled. Plus, you glow like dawn. Hard to miss. I'm terrified, she whispered. Good. Means you understand the weight of it. But Clara? He turned to her. Fear is just wisdom waiting to become courage. You've got plenty of both. That evening, she told Marp. They were sitting by the creek, watching the sunset paint the water gold. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. There's something I need to tell you. He went still. His eyes searched hers, and what he found there made him pull her against him, fierce and tender at once. When? Winter, I think. December, maybe. A child. His voice was full of wonder. Our child. Are you happy? He pulled back to look at her. Happy? Clara, I'm. He switched to Comanche, words flowing like water, then back to English. There's no word big enough. I thought my chance at fatherhood died with my sons. But you keep giving me back pieces of myself I thought were gone forever. I'm scared, she admitted. What if, no? He pressed his forehead to hers. We don't borrow grief from tomorrow. We have today. We have this. That's enough. But the world, as always, had other plans. The letter came 2 weeks later, delivered by a nervous young man who wouldn't meet Clara's eyes. Official government stationery. Her hand shook as she read it aloud. Mrs. Dustbourne, it has come to our attention that you are harboring individuals of interest to the federal government. Furthermore, reports suggest you have entered into an illegal marriage with a Comanche warrior. As interracial marriage is forbidden by territorial law, you are hereby ordered to appear before the circuit judge to answer charges of moral turpitude and violation of the Racial Integrity Act. Failure to appear will result in forfeiture of your property and arrest. You have 30 days to comply. The silence that followed was heavy as stone. Illegal, Clara spat the word. They're calling our love illegal. Marp took the letter and read it again. His jaw worked. They want the land. This is just the excuse. Then we fight. Like before. No. Kainu spoke from the doorway. Not like before. Before was bullets. This is law. Different weapon. He's right, Marp said slowly. We need a different strategy. Clara felt the baby flutter, too early to be real movement, but she felt it anyway. I won't let them take this from us. Any of it. The next morning, Tom Aldridge arrived with his son, who'd studied law back east. The young man, James, looked uncomfortable but determined. There might be a way, he said. The territorial law is clear, but federal law is murky. And there's precedent, Cherokee Nation cases that establish tribal sovereignty in certain matters. I'm not Cherokee, Marp pointed out. No, but you're Comanche. And if we can establish that your marriage was performed according to Comanche law, on what could be argued as Comanche land. This is my land, Clara interrupted. Exactly. But what if it wasn't? What if you signed it over to the Comanche band? Made it tribal land? The room went quiet. I'd lose everything, Clara said slowly. If this doesn't work. You'd lose it anyway if they convict you, James pointed out. This way, at least there's a chance. Clara looked at Marp. He was already shaking his head. I won't let you, it's not your choice. She turned to James. Draw up the papers. The news spread like wildfire. Clara Dustborn, giving her land to Indians. The town was split, some calling her a traitor, others admiring her grit. Pastor William surprised everyone by offering to perform a Christian ceremony to supplement the Comanche one they'd already had. Make it harder for them to deny, he said gruffly. God's law trumps man's law, in my book. The ceremony was small but perfect. Clara wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to accommodate her growing belly. Marp wore a mix of Comanche traditional and American formal. Kainu stood as witness, along with the widow Martinez and, surprisingly, most of the ranchers who'd come to their aid before. Are you sure about this? Tom asked Clara before walking her down the makeshift aisle. Never been more sure of anything, she said. The ceremony was performed twice, once in English, once in Comanche. When Marp kissed her, she felt their child move properly for the first time, as if blessing the union. But the government wasn't done. They came again, this time with legal papers instead of guns. The sheriff, at least, looked apologetic. I have to serve these, Clara. I'm sorry. She took the papers. Eviction notice. The land transfer was being challenged. They had 10 days to vacate while the courts decided. Where are we supposed to go? She asked. The sheriff couldn't meet her eyes. That's not my department. That night, Clara sat with Marp on their porch, watching stars appear one by one. We could go to Mexico, he offered. Start fresh. No. Her hand found his. This is our home. Where our children will be born. Where their grandchildren will be born. We don't run. Then what? She smiled, and it was as sharp as winter wind. We get creative. The solution came from an unexpected source, the railroad. Specifically, from a railroad executive who owed Clara's late husband a significant debt. Clara rode 2 days to meet him, Marp at her side despite her protests. Daniel saved my life once, the executive, Morrison, said after hearing their plight. Pulled me from a river when my horse threw me. I always meant to repay that debt. Then help us now, Clara said simply. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then, the railroad needs a water station. About where your land sits. If the Comanche band were to sign a treaty, giving us water rights in exchange for recognizing their claim to the land. The government couldn't challenge it, Marp finished. Not without challenging the railroad. And we don't like our water rights challenged, Morrison smiled. Bad for business. The papers were drawn up that day. The water station would be built on the eastern edge of the property, leaving the rest untouched. In exchange, the railroad would defend the Comanche claim in court. Why? Clara asked as they prepared to leave. Really, why? Morrison looked out his window. Because I've seen what's coming. The frontie's ending. Soon there won't be any place for men like your husband to ride free. But maybe, if we're smart about it, we can preserve some spaces. Some freedoms. Call it investment in a future that's not quite as civilized as some would like. They rode home to find the ranch transformed. The other ranchers had come again, this time with lumber and supplies. A proper house was being raised, not replacing Clara's, but expanding it. Figured if you're going to be a proper tribal headquarters, Tom said, might as well look the part. Clara cried then, hormones and gratitude overwhelming her usual composure. These people, who judged her and shunned her, were now building her future with their own hands. Don't get all weepy, the widow Martinez scolded. We're not doing it for free. That toe promised to train our horses. Man's got magic hands. As the sun set on what would be remembered as the day of building, Clara stood surrounded by family, blood, choice, and circumstance. Her hand rested on her growing belly while Marp's arms encircled her from behind. Still scared, he murmured. Always, she admitted. But not alone. Never alone again. The government challenge was quietly dropped 2 months later. The railroad's lawyers were very good, very expensive, and very clear about their clients' interests. Clara Dustborn Marp, she'd taken both names. Another small rebellion gave birth to twins on the first day of December, snow falling soft as blessings. A boy and a girl, with their father's dark hair and their mother's green eyes. They named them Daniel and Rose, for the past. But their Comanche names, Tabby, Sun, and Pia, Mother Moon, spoke to the future. They'll have both worlds, Marp said, holding his son while Clara nursed their daughter. All worlds. Good, Clara said. The more worlds, the better chance they'll find where they belong. Outside, wolves howled in celebration or simple wildness. Inside, a fire crackled warm and constant. And somewhere between the two, a family that shouldn't exist thrived anyway. Because sometimes the best revenge against a world that says you can't is simply to do, and do it so well that the world has to change its definitions. Clara had learned to live alone. Then she'd learned to live together. Now, watching her husband teach their son to howl back at the wolves while their daughter slept milk-drunk and perfect in her arms, she was learning something new, how to live unashamed. Clara stood on the same porch, though it was wider now, wrapping around the entire house. Her hair had gone silver at the temples, and lines mapped years of sun and laughter on her face. But her eyes, still green as spring grass, remained sharp. Mama, Tabby's being insufferable again, Rose called from the barn. At 19, she was her mother's daughter, stubborn, skilled with horses, and unimpressed by her brother's attempts at authority. I'm the elder by 12 minutes, Tabby protested, following his sister out. That means nothing, Rose interrupted. Besides, everyone knows Kainu runs things when Papa's away. Clara hid her smile. Kainu, now a man of 36, had indeed become the unofficial foreman of what was now the largest horse ranch in 3 counties. The Dustborn Marp Ranch bred the finest horses in Texas, trained using methods that blended Comanche tradition with modern technique. Where is your father? Clara asked. Tribal council meeting, Rose said. The government wants to buy more water rights. Of course they do. Clara sighed. It never ended, the push and pull. But they'd learned to navigate it, to bend without breaking. The ranch had become a town of sorts. 40 people now called it home, Comanche who'd fled reservations, former slaves seeking new starts, Mexican cowboys, and even a few white families who didn't mind their neighbors' mixed blood. They had a school where children learned 3 languages, a trading post, and even a small church where Pastor William's son preached tolerance alongside scripture. Riders coming, Tabby announced, shading his eyes. Looks like a military. Clara's hand found the rifle that still lived by the door. Old habits. But as the riders drew closer, she relaxed. It was James Aldridge, now a federal judge, accompanied by an army officer she didn't recognize. "Clara," James dismounted, smiling. "Still ready to shoot first, I see." Still breathing because of it, she countered. "What brings a federal judge to my porch?" "This is Colonel Matthews. He's here with a proposition." The colonel, young for his rank, stepped forward. "The army needs horses. Specifically, horses were trained for rough terrain and long campaigns. We've heard yours are the best. Have you now? Your methods, blending traditional and modern techniques, produce mounts that outperform anything we're getting elsewhere. We'd like to establish a contract. Exclusive supply for the Western cavalry units." Clara studied him. "And in exchange? Federal protection for your land rights. Permanent recognition of the Dustbourne Marp Ranch as a sovereign entity. No more challenges, no more threats." "Why now?" James answered. "Because times are changing, Clara. The old guard is dying off. The new generation." He gestured to the colonel. "They're more interested in what works than in what color it is." Before Clara could respond, Marp appeared on his painted horse, moving fast. He dismounted in one fluid motion, positioning himself slightly between Clara and the visitors. "Gentlemen," he said coolly. "Papa," Rose said, "they want to buy our horses." "All of them? Forever?" Marp looked at Clara. 20 years of marriage had taught them to read each other like weather signs. She saw his question and answered with the slightest nod. "We'll consider it," Marp said. "Terms to be negotiated. But understand, this land, these people, our ways, they're not for sale. You buy horses, nothing more." "Understood," the colonel said. "I'll have the contracts drawn up." After they left, the family gathered for supper. The table had grown over the years, Kanu's wife and children, Saf, ancient now but still sharp, various adopted strays, and chosen family. The conversation flowed in 3 languages, sometimes all at once. "Federal protection," Tabby mused. "That's big." "It's survival," Marp corrected. "Nothing more, nothing less." "Still," Rose said, "it's acknowledgement. That we exist. That we matter." Clara reached for Marp's hand under the table. "We always mattered. Now they just admit it." Later, as they often did, Clara and Marp walked to the hill where Daniel and baby Rose were buried. 2 stones among many now, the ranch had its own cemetery for all the souls who'd found their final rest on this transformed land. "Did you imagine this?" Clara asked. "That night you knocked on my door." "No." He pulled her against him. "I imagined shelter from a storm. Nothing more. And instead I found home." He kissed her temple. "Found you? Smooth talker. Truth talker." He turned her to face him. "Clara, my beautiful Tsina, we've built something impossible here. Good thing we didn't know it was impossible when we started." He laughed, that rare, full sound she never tired of hearing. "Our children will inherit more than land. They'll inherit proof that love makes its own laws. Think they'll keep it going? After we're gone?" "Look at them," Marp said. Clara turned. Down the hill, Tabby was teaching the youngest ranch children to track rabbits, while Rose trained a yearling with infinite patience. Kanu supervised both, his own children running wild between the lessons. "They'll keep it going," Marp said with certainty. "And their children after them. Because we taught them the most important thing. Which is? That home isn't about blood or law or what the world says is proper. Home is about choosing to stand together when the storms come. And storms always come." As if in agreement, thunder rumbled in the distance. Not threatening, promising. Rain for the crops, water for the horses, life for the land. "Let's go in," Clara said. "Before we get soaked." "In a moment." Marp held her close, watching the storm approach. I want to remember this. You and me and the world we made despite everything. Because of everything, Clara corrected. Every broken thing led us here. Then blessed be the breaking. And blessed be the mending. They walk back to their impossible home as the first drops fell, hands linked, hearts full. Behind them, on the hill, the graves kept their silent watch. Before them, in the sprawling ranch, life continued its noisy, messy, beautiful dance. And in between, two people who'd found each other in the storm and chosen to weather all the rest together, proving daily that the strongest structures are built on foundations the world insists cannot hold. But they held anyway. They held on forever. 5 years after the twins were born, trouble came wearing a familiar face. Clara was teaching Rose to read animal tracks when the dogs started barking, not their usual greeting, but the sharp, aggressive sound reserved for true strangers. Inside, Clara ordered, but Rose, stubborn as her mother, climbed the fence for a better look. "Mama, there's a woman. She looks hurt." Against her better judgment, Clara approached the gate. The woman was indeed injured, slumped over an exhausted horse, blood seeping through her torn dress. But when she lifted her head, Clara's blood went cold. "Hello, sister," Margaret Whitlock said, managing a bitter smile despite her pale face. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" Clara hadn't seen her younger sister in 12 years. Not since Margaret had sided with their father in disowning Clara for marrying beneath her station the first time. Now here she was, looking like death warmed over, on the ranch that scandal built. "Rose, get your father," Clara said quietly. "Now." Margaret half fell from her horse. Clara caught her instinctively, sister bond stronger than old wounds. "What happened to you?" "My husband," Margaret gasped. "Ex-husband now, I suppose. He didn't take kindly to me leaving." Clara helped her inside, medical instincts overriding family complications. The wounds were ugly but not fatal, a knife slash across her ribs, bruises in the shape of hands around her throat. Marp arrived as Clara was cleaning the wounds. His eyes took in the situation instantly. "Family." "My sister," Clara said tightly. "Margaret, this is my husband." Margaret's eyes widened, but she said nothing. Couldn't, really, given that the man she was staring at had just saved her from bleeding out on her sister's floor. Later, with Margaret sedated and resting, Clara stood on the porch with Marp, watching storm clouds gather. "She can't stay," Clara said. "She's poison. Always has been. She's blood. Blood that called me a whore for marrying a blacksmith's son. Blood that stood with our father when he said I was dead to the family." Clara's hands clenched. Blood that never once reached out in 12 years. Marp was quiet. Then, and now she's here, beaten and bleeding, with nowhere else to go. "Sounds familiar." "That's different, is it?" He turned to face her. "When I came to your door, I was running too. You didn't ask what I was running from. You just opened the door. You weren't my sister who betrayed me. No. I was a stranger who could have brought death to your doorstep. Which did I deserve more, your trust or your sister's?" Clara wanted to argue, but the words died in her throat. Because he was right, damn him. He usually was when it came to matters of mercy. Margaret woke screaming from nightmares 3 times that first night. Clara found herself going to her, holding her sister while she sobbed out a story of slow-building violence, of a marriage that had become a prison, of finally running when he'd threatened to kill her. "Why come here?" Clara asked when the tears slowed. "After everything?" "Because," Margaret whispered, "I heard stories. About a woman who lived free. Who married whom she chose and stood against the government itself. And I realized, that woman was my sister. The one I'd been taught to despise. The only one who might understand." "Understand what?" "What it's like to be called wrong for wanting to breathe." The next days were tense. The ranch community watched Margaret with suspicion, this white woman who looked at their mixed families with eyes that couldn't quite hide old prejudices. But slowly, things shifted. It started with the children. Daniel and Rose, 5 years old and fearless, decided their aunt was interesting. They peppered her with questions in their mix of languages, showed her their treasures, and demanded stories. "They're beautiful," Margaret said one evening, watching the twins play with the other ranch children, a rainbow of colors and cultures. "They're mine," Clara said, still defensive. "I know. I meant it. They're beautiful." Margaret paused. "I was wrong. About everything. Father was wrong. The whole world we grew up in was wrong. Easy to say now." "No," Margaret said firmly. "It's the hardest thing I've ever said. Do you know what it's like to realize your entire life was built on lies? That everything you were taught to value was poison?" Clara softened slightly. "Actually, yes. I do know." That night, Margaret's husband arrived. Jefferson Whitlock was everything their father had wanted in a son-in-law: wealthy, connected, and cruel in that polished way that passed for strength in certain circles. He came with 5 men and legal papers. "My wife," he announced at the gate, "has clearly suffered a mental break. I'm here to collect her for proper treatment." Clara stood beside Marp, rifle casual in her arms. "She's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go. You have no legal standing. I'm her husband." "Former husband," Margaret said, stepping out of the house. She looked different, wearing some of Clara's clothes, hair braided back, shoulders straight. "I filed the papers before I left. Abandonment. Abuse. Take your pick." Jefferson's face darkened. "You stupid bitch. You think you can just—" The rifle shot sent his hat flying. Clara levered another round, calm as Sunday morning. "That's my sister you're talking to. Mind your manners. You'll hang for this," Jefferson snarled. "All of you. Harboring a fugitive wife, living in sin with savages, get off my land," Clara said. "Now. Or the next shot won't miss." They left, but everyone knew they'd be back. With more men. With sheriffs. With whatever violence money could buy. "I should go," Margaret said that night. "I've brought trouble to your door." "Trouble's an old friend here," Kainu said. He'd been quiet during the confrontation, but Clara had seen him positioning the younger warriors. "We know how to greet him." "But this is my fight." "No," Rose said firmly. "Your Aunt Margaret. That makes it our fight." Margaret burst into tears. "I don't deserve this. Any of this. I was horrible to Clara. I said unforgivable things." "Good thing forgiveness doesn't care what you deserve," Marp said. "It only cares what you choose now." The attack came 3 nights later. Not just Jefferson and hired guns, but a crooked sheriff and deputies, all there to enforce the law. They surrounded the ranch, torches bright in the darkness. "Send her out," Jefferson called. "Or we burn it all down." Clara looked at Margaret, who was pale but determined. "Your choice," Clara said. "We'll fight either way." Margaret picked up a rifle, awkwardly, but with purpose. "I choose family. The real kind." The battle was shorter than expected. Jefferson had made a crucial error. He'd assumed the ranch had only the fighters he could see. He hadn't counted on the Mexican ranch hands from the trading post, or the freed slaves from the neighboring farm, or the dozen young Comanche warriors who'd been training in the hills. When the dust settled, Jefferson was on the ground, nursing a bullet wound in his shoulder courtesy of Margaret herself. The crooked sheriff was tied to his horse and sent back to town with a message about what happened to men who threatened the Dustborn Marp ranch. "You shot me," Jefferson gasped at Margaret. "Your own husband." "Ex-husband," she corrected. "And yes. Clara taught me. Said every woman should know how to defend herself." She looked at her sister. It took me 12 years to understand what she meant. As the ranch settled back into quiet, Margaret found Clara sitting by Daniel's and baby Rose's graves. "I'm sorry," Margaret said simply. "For not being here. For not understanding. For everything. I know, Clara said. Sit with me. They sat in silence, sisters separated by years and choices, brought together by violence and its answer. Finally, Margaret asked, "How do you do it? Live free when the whole world says you can't." Clara smiled, thinking of all the battles fought and won, all the love built despite opposition. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One bullet at a time, when necessary. Teach me? Already started, didn't I? You shot your ex-husband. They laughed then, sisters again, or maybe for the first time truly. And when Marp came to find them, bringing coffee and quiet companionship, Margaret saw what Clara had, a partnership built on equality, respect, and shared strength. I want that, Margaret whispered. What you have. Then stay, Clara said. Help us build. Find your own version. Margaret stayed. She learned to ride astride, to shoot straight, and to speak truth. She helped teach the ranch children, finding purpose in education. And when, 2 years later, a traveling doctor named Liu Wei came to trade medical knowledge with Clara, Margaret found her own unexpected love story. But that night, sitting between the graves and the stars, the sisters just held hands and healed what years had broken. 10 years passed in the way time does on land that's loved, slowly and then all at once. The twins were 15, all legs and questions, and their parents' combined stubbornness. The ranch had grown into a proper town, with its own post office, school, and even a newspaper run by Margaret and her husband. It was a Tuesday when she arrived, stepping off the weekly supply wagon like she'd been expected. Amelia Morrison, 18 years old, was dressed in traveling clothes that cost more than most people's homes. The railroad executive's daughter came to see that experiment her father had helped fund. Miss Morrison, Clara greeted her, wary. Rich young women visiting usually meant trouble of one kind or another. Mrs. Dustborn Marp, Amelia replied, then surprised everyone by greeting Marp in passable Comanche. My father sends his regards. Why are you here? Rose asked, blunt as always. Amelia smiled. Because my father says this place shouldn't exist. That it's an anomaly that will fail within a generation. I disagree. I'm here to prove him wrong. By doing what? Daniel asked, immediately interested. He'd inherited his father's skill with horses but his mother's head for business. By documenting everything. The economic model, the social structure, and the educational system. I want to write a book that proves mixed communities aren't just viable, they're the future. Clara and Marp exchanged glances. And if we don't want to be studied like specimens? Then I'll leave, Amelia said simply. But I hope you'll let me try. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to learn. It was Kainu who decided, as he often did in matters of trust. She can stay. But she works. No passengers on this ranch. Amelia's eyes lit up. I'd be honored. What followed was comedy and revelation in equal measure. Amelia, who'd never worked a day in her life, threw herself into ranch life with enthusiasm that bordered on dangerous. She mucked stalls, fell off horses, burned dinner, and generally made a cheerful mess of everything she touched. But she also asked questions, good ones. Why did the Comanche horse training methods work better? How did the trilingual education affect the children's development? What made the ranch's economic model sustainable when others failed? You're not what I expected, Clara told her one evening, finding Amelia writing notes by lamplight, her hands now calloused and competent. Neither are you, Amelia replied. Father painted you as a wild woman who'd lost her mind. But you're probably the sanest person I've ever met. Sanity's relative out here. Everything's relative out here. That's what makes it work. Amelia set down her pen. Can I ask you something personal? You can ask. How did you know? That Marp was worth risking everything for. Clara considered. I didn't. I just knew that everything I was risking wasn't worth keeping if it meant being alone. She studied the young woman. Why do you ask? Amelia blushed. No reason. But Clara had seen the way Amelia watched Daniel work with the horses, the way she laughed at his dry humor, and the way she found excuses to be wherever he was. He's 15, Clara said gently. You're 18. I know. I'm not. I wouldn't. Amelia sighed. He's just unlike any man I've met. Boy. Young man. Whatever. He's my son, Clara said, warning clear. And I respect that. I respect him. I'm not here to cause problems. Clara believed her? There was something honest about Amelia, something that reminded Clara of herself at that age, ready to challenge the world but not sure how to start. The problem came from an unexpected source, Rose. She's using us, Rose declared at dinner. For her book. Her career. We're just research to her. That's not true, Daniel protested. Isn't it? She asks questions, writes everything down, and then what? Goes back to her fancy life and publishes our secrets. They're not secrets, Marp said calmly. We've hidden nothing. But she doesn't understand, Rose insisted. She plays at working, plays at belonging, but she can leave whenever she wants. We can't. The table fell silent. It was an old wound, rarely spoken, the knowledge that no matter how successful the ranch became, the outside world still saw them as an aberration. You're right, Amelia said quietly. I can leave. I have that privilege. But I'm trying to use it for something good. Trying isn't enough, Rose shot back. Then tell me what it is. Rose stood abruptly and left. Daniel followed, torn between his sister and whatever Amelia was becoming to him. She's not wrong, Clara told Amelia later. Books can hurt as much as help, depending on how they're written. Then help me write it right, Amelia pleaded. I want to show the world what you've built here. Not as a curiosity, but as a model. And if the world doesn't want to see, then I'll make them look. The crisis came a month later. Amelia's father arrived unannounced, flanked by investors and territorial officials. He was furious to find his daughter dressed like a ranch hand, hands dirty, arguing the finer points of horse breeding with a 15-year-old mixed-blood boy. Amelia, we're leaving. Now. No. The word hung in the air like a challenge. Morrison's face darkened. You're my daughter. You'll do as I say. I'm 18. I'm an adult. And I'm not leaving. This place has corrupted you, this place has taught me more in 2 months than 18 years in your world. Amelia stepped closer to Daniel, who looked ready to fight despite being outweighed by 100 pounds. I'm staying. Morrison turned to Clara. You've bewitched her. Filled her head with radical ideas, she came with those, Clara said dryly. We just gave her space to explore them. I'll cut off your water rights. End the contract. Try it, Marp said quietly. See how your board reacts when we publicize that you're punishing your daughter for educating herself. It was a standoff, the kind Clara had seen too many times. But this time, unexpected help came from Rose. She's earned her place, Rose said, stepping forward. I didn't think she would, but she has. She works as hard as anyone. Learns from her mistakes. Treats us like people, not subjects. She looked at Amelia. The book can wait. What matters is she's choosing to stay. Morrison looked between his daughter and these people he'd never tried to understand. Something in his expression shifted, not acceptance exactly, but resignation. 3 months, he said finally. You have 3 months to finish your research. Then you come home and we discuss your future rationally. 6 months, Amelia countered. And then I decide my own future. They settled on 4, though everyone knew Amelia had already decided. That night, there was a celebration. Not for the confrontation, but for the choice. Amelia had chosen them, and they'd chosen her back. In the firelight, Watching Daniel teach Amelia a Comanche dance while Rose called out corrections, Clara felt the familiar warmth of family expanding. "She'll be good for him," Marp observed. "When they're both ready." 3 years minimum, Clara said firmly. "He needs to grow up. She needs to find herself." "Agreed. But after that?" Clara smiled. "After that, we'll have educated the railroad's daughter in more than just horse breeding." The book, when it was finally published 5 years later, changed everything. Not overnight, not easily, but steadily. Other mixed communities formed, using the Dustborn Marp model. Laws slowly changed. The world, grudgingly, began to accommodate what it couldn't prevent. And at the wedding of Daniel Dustborn Marp and Amelia Morrison, a ceremony performed in 3 languages with a crowd that included railroad executives and Comanche warriors, Clara allowed herself a moment of pure pride. They'd built something that couldn't be destroyed by bullets or laws or prejudice. They'd built a family that chose itself, over and over, despite every reason not to. And it would outlive them all. If this story stirred something within you, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment. Sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply choosing to love who you love, where you love, despite what the world says is acceptable.